Hi dear Africa Business Jumpstarters, this is Dr. Harnet, your Africa Business Coach online and offline, and I hope that you're very well wherever in the world you are. So today I would love to share a couple of success secrets in Africa's agribusiness and agricultural sectors with you. And this is for you if you're planning to start a venture in these sectors, or maybe you're running an agribusiness venture already and you're looking for ways to diversify that. Or you're planning to invest into agriculture and agribusiness and you're really looking for a product with great potential and return on investment. Now, before I start sharing these amazing tips and products and strategies that I want you to be aware of, I really want to give you a little bit of an insight about the wider dynamics. I believe it's important that we understand the wider context and dynamics of a certain industry so we can actually grasp why it holds so much potential and opportunity for us, be it now or in future. Now, in regards to Africa's agriculture and agribusiness sectors, it is pretty straightforward. The main driver for that is really the huge population we have on the continent. And it's not only a huge population, but it's also the fastest growing population on this globe. And these are people that need to eat and drink, and that every single day. And that means really if you position yourself smartly in agriculture and agribusiness, you will have constant demand, be it now or in future. It is not going to dry up. It's going to be, constant and continue to grow, unless of course, you experience some other external shock that may not have been foreseen. But it's not only Africa that is looking to be fed, it's also the rest of the world. People in the rest of the world and industries are also looking towards Africa for, as a source for food and drink items, be it as agricultural produce that is unprocessed or be it as processed food items. Now, and that really is the main driver behind, the huge potential these sectors and industries hold for you. Well, there is a couple of more facts that I would love to share with you, and that is to look at, the kind of potential of these sectors as compared to other sectors and industries in Africa. Now, according to Ernst & Young, the fastest growing sector over the next decades, without a doubt, on the continent, of course, will be the sector of fast-moving consumer goods. Okay, so that's fast-moving consumer goods, and that includes everything from household item, clothing, but also food and drink products. Now, the second fastest growing sector in Africa, according to Ernst & Young, will be the agricultural sector. And that is, of course, the production of agricultural produce in its raw format, so unprocessed. Now, when you combine the two, the production of raw produce on the fields and then the processed food items and drink items in the fast-moving consumer goods sector, then agribusiness, so the value addition to raw produce is really the link between these two sectors. So as you can already see, in terms of which are the industries and the sectors that will be the fastest growing in Africa, we have both the fast moving consumer goods, where food items in its processed form are part of, and then we have the agriculture sector on number 2. And you will be diving into this growth story. And of course, it's very important that you choose the right products and strategies, and that's exactly what I want to share with you today. Now, very often when we think about agriculture, we think about the typical things, maybe, maize or rice or onions, potatoes and tomatoes. And of course, there's demand in Africa for all of that. But it can be a challenge for solo entrepreneurs, for those of us who are starting from scratch or who have possibly a limited amount of budget. And it can be a challenge for us because we are up against huge competition. Now, because the competition can be very, very big, it means that often the price and the profit margins are not very, very good. And that again means that you actually have to produce in bulk or in larger quantities to make a healthy profit. Now, on the contrary, there are so-called high-value crops. And these kind of high-value crops are very often non-traditional crops. And I will dive into which kind of crops and products these are in a minute. But just again, to give you a little bit of insights. Now, these high-value crops, they fetch a much larger price for per kilogram of that produce, for example, and therefore starting small or with a small amount of land, with small quantities, can make you a very healthy profit and cash flow, because number one, the profit margins are much larger, but number two, because they're non-traditional African products, the competition is low. And that means that you will almost always find buyers. You can probably not meet the demand at all. But it also means that you can position yourself, even as a newcomer, very quickly as one of the leaders in the market for these products. Now, I want to give you, a little bit insight of a certain country that is actually using that as a strategy. And that country is Rwanda. Now, the reason why Rwanda is now looking to produce high-value crops is because of its small land size. So Rwanda has a very small land size, and that means that really there is a limit to agricultural production because there's not enough land. And therefore the government has decided to focus on high value crops, so crops that can fetch a higher amount of capital, a higher value, per square meter, for example, or per hectare, we say on the crops, than traditional lower value crops. And there you can see that this is also a success strategy that cannot be adapted by single entrepreneurs, but it's also adapted by certain African countries that are dealing with a small land size, and therefore they're up for competition also in regards to countries that have much larger land sizes. They too need to position themselves successfully and strategically. And that is exactly the kind of approach that I want you to take, or I suggest you take if you are starting from scratch, or you're starting small with a small piece of land or with a limited amount of budget. Now let's dive into the high value crops and products. And really, of course, there are several out there. But today I want to mention two, and they're my two favorites. So those of you who have been following me, and of course our members and so, will know straight away which these two are. And these are strawberries and mushrooms. Strawberries and mushrooms. So again, strawberries and mushrooms are not traditional agricultural products in Africa. However, still there's a huge demand for them. Let me explain a little bit more. So there is, for example, a fast-growing hospitality and tourism industry in almost every African market. In fact, when you look at most government agendas, tourism is right there at the top in regards to trying to drive forward national growth, trying to attract investment and so on. Tourism is at the top for many, many African countries, and it's often one of the main sources for national income. And that means, of course, you have to also, build and develop the tourism industry, and that includes food and eating, and within the hospitality sector. Now, there is a huge demand for products such as strawberries or mushrooms among hotels and among restaurants, because they are offering these products, of course, to tourists, for example, or to upper class citizens of a certain country. And so the hotels and the restaurants within a certain country will be one of your main clientele for strawberries or mushrooms. But then we also have upper market supermarkets, and these supermarkets also are looking increasingly to stock such products in their shelves, because also when we are looking at Africa's upper middle class and upper class, they very often follow Western eating habits, and so they are looking for these kind of products too. In regards to strawberries, what you will also find is that there's a huge demand for strawberries in the dairy industry. So especially in countries where we have now a fast-growing dairy industry, they are looking for strawberries, for yogurt and milkshakes and so on. So a lot of the strawberry farmers are selling directly to the dairy farms, the dairy sector that are processing the milk into dairy products. So these are the kind of quite powerful clients you can have locally. But then on top of that, of course, we also have export opportunity, and that is as soon as you are able to produce higher quality and higher quantity, you will also be able to export either into neighboring countries or even abroad. Now, strawberries, for example, is a very, very popular fruit and berry in Europe, and there you will find that strawberries are only grown once per year during the summer period, and the rest of the year these strawberries need to be imported. So there is a big gap for you to come in. In regards to mushrooms, there is a huge demand for mushrooms too, and the thing is this, that certain mushrooms such as oysters and in dried format are really fetching a huge price in the West, and Africa is able to offer that at a much lower price. Now let me tell you a little bit more about mushroom production. Actually, we met recently, and if I say we, I mean myself and our academy members. We met recently with one of the leading mushroom corporations in Cameroon, and we met with the founder and CEO, who gave us amazing insights into mushroom production. So this lady has, she grew up at the grassroots, so in the villages of Cameroon. She understands the struggles and the dreams of the people in the villages in her country, but she had the opportunity to study in the USA, and that's where she came across mushroom production. Now she decided to bring that back home to Cameroon and to build her mushroom corporation. Now, after just 3 years, she was the leading mushroom producer in Cameroon, and that really on a shoestring budget. And of course, she had to overcome some hurdles because she was completely new to mushroom production, and it was a huge curve of of education and so on. But people like her are now passing this kind of knowledge on. And according to the CEO, her name is Bridget, according to Bridget, the opportunity is absolutely fantastic. In her view, actually, it could turn around entire communities. Now, mushrooms, first of all, they're not seeds. They're grown out of spores. So the spores you need to import, and you need to keep them cool. But the thing with mushrooms is that you don't necessarily need access to land in traditional terms, agricultural land where you have, you kind of plant them into the soils. But you can grow mushrooms even in traditional huts or in some kind of warehouses, and you can grow them not only on soil but also on certain agricultural residue. So for example, leftovers from cassava harvest and so on. So the leftover of certain harvest can be used as a ground to grow mushrooms. So you can kind of collect it or buy it off the farmers and then use it for your mushroom production. Now, mushroom production is something that I have really suggested for at least a couple of years, because following entrepreneurs that have gone into mushroom production, the success stories are really, really good. And mushroom fetches between $2.5 to $4 US, across the continent, per kilogram, sorry, $2.5 to $4 US per kilogram. And that is a really good price, per kilogram in Africa. Now, according to Bridget, the price will even grow if you dry the mushrooms. So, for example, you offer dried oyster. And these oyster mushrooms can be dried just in the sun. That's what she told us. And she said, don't dry them for too long so they don't get too dry. But by drying them naturally in the sun, they have a much longer shelf life too. And that, of course, is of great benefit to you. And those mushrooms in Cameroon fetch $5 US per kilogram. Now, Bridget said the demand is huge. It's not coming only from restaurants and hotels and even just, single consumers in Cameroon, but she said she has also requests from people within the region. So she said, for example, there was a Nigerian trading company that approached her, but they wanted at least 2,000 kilograms of mushroom every single week. And she wasn't able to produce that amount yet with her corporation. So she couldn't commit to it. So she had to, turn down buyers and many buyers. And you will find yourself in that position soon, I believe, if you really approach it in a very professional way. And the word will spread, and it is very likely that you will not be able to meet demand, and you will have buyers queuing, be it for your mushrooms or your strawberries. In fact, if we're looking at strawberry farmers, again, across the continent, and I have followed strawberry production in Kenya in particular, they all say that they are selling within 2-3 hours because the demand is so big and they can't even, meet that locally. So they haven't even thought about, exporting regionally or internationally because the demand locally is already so big. And they continue to grow and grow and grow, and they reinvest the money they made into their business so they can grow further. Now, when we compare the two, I really believe, here's the thing, with mushrooms you can grow them actually vertical. So you can grow them on shelves vertical, and you don't need huge amounts of land. As I said, it could be huts or it could be a warehouse or so on. But the thing with mushrooms is that you need to keep the environment very, very clean and kind of cool. And that's very important. That can be a little bit of a challenge. You need some storage for coolers, for the spores and the mushrooms. And you may need some investment into solar equipment, so to make sure these coolers are maintained. In regards to strawberries, one of the best strawberry, what are they called? I lost the word. Of course, there are many kind of strawberries, of course, and the main one or the best one for Africa is called Chandler. And this is the best one because it kind of is pretty resistant towards heat. Now, strawberries are much easier to grow than mushrooms because they don't need, a special environment in terms of clean environment. And, with mushrooms, you need to make sure that there's no contamination and so on. So strawberries are pretty easy to grow. And in several countries, such as Kenya, for example, you can actually get the seedlings from the Ministry of Agriculture. Now, the good thing with strawberry is once you have received your first batch of seedlings, they will grow new seedlings themselves, and you can just cut them with a scissor and put them back into the soil, and you have a new soil, and you have you have a new plant. So that really means you don't need to worry much about where to get your seeds from or your seedlings from, because they produce their own seedlings. Now, in both cases, another very great benefit is that they have a very short growing cycle. So we're looking 3 to 6 months for the first batch, and then you can kind of continuously harvest your mushrooms and strawberries. So again, go for high value crops. There is huge potential in that in Africa, and is especially a great strategy when you're starting out. So this was it from me. This is goodbye from me, Dr. Harnet, and I hope you found this video useful. Hop over to my website at africajumpstart.com and sign up for my 6 best business models for the diaspora if you are in the diaspora and you're looking for ways to start your own business in Africa. It's bye from me. Bye bye.